And I mean, literally, they are throwing so much stuff on a daily basis at us. And they presume they flood the zone enough. There's almost a question of which and where do you pick your fights. And that is something, let me acknowledge on the front end. The Democrats in Washington got to do a better job. You know, let me say that out front. You know, the whole debacle we went into between the two awful choices of the continuing resolution or shutting down the government. Frankly, we lost that battle 2 weeks before the vote took place. We should have demanded a meeting with Trump, with the Democratic leadership, and said, put stuff on the table. But I want to at least start with two pieces of good news, and then we'll get to reality. So far, it has been virtually impossible to get any Republican to find their voice. You know, and I know I've got criticized at times for trying to work with them too much and stuff, but it just doesn't cut it anymore where they tell me privately, oh my God, what this guy's doing is awful. That doesn't mean squat if you're not willing to step up and stand up. And the two things I want to mention is, one area that I have worked on for 15 years is something called access to capital. There's a group of financial institutions called Community Development Financial Institutions, CDFIs. They, by definition, have to lend 60% to low and moderate income people. Last week, even though Trump had said he's all for them, they came out with one of these stupid EOs that tried to undercut him. Didn't get much press, but I got 10 Republican senators to actually put their names on a letter pushing back against Trump. This is the first, literally, the first breakthrough. It's small. I don't want to oversay it, but it is a small. And then we have the Signalgate fiasco. Let me just make a couple comments there, then we take questions. This would be bad enough if it was a one-off. But this is a pattern of sloppiness. It's a pattern of not having responsibility. It is a pattern, and it's what happens when you put people in jobs they had no business being in the first place. So let me tell you what I mean. You may not remember this, but in the first 2 weeks of this administration, the Trump administration let 200 names of CIA officers out on an unclassified network. Now, why you should say, well, why does that matter to me? Well, it matters to you because we have spent a couple $100,000 getting those people a security check and sending them to school to learn how to be a CIA agent. They can't be a CIA agent posted abroad if their identity's been put out. Every day, Musk and the Doge boys put out stuff that's either ignorant or malicious where they put out classified information. Literally, all right, no more applause till we get through the questions. I got to get all this stuff out, and you're going to ask a lot of questions, and sometimes you're going to yell at me. I know what's coming. But they literally posted this list of properties they thought the federal government should share. Nobody told them that they put on that list a classified site. So the idea that this is a oops, one-off, baloney. Look at what these guys did. Signal is not a classified channel. And you put this information out, we still don't know if those phones that they were using have been collected. The bad guys can put malware on your phone without touching it. And the notional idea that they put out the attack plan on a non-classified setting where they were so freaking careless they didn't even bother to check who was on that. And then for Hegseth to say, the Secretary of Defense, say, oh, there's nothing there. Well, say that to the parents and family and friends of sailors on the Truman, because they are deployed. If that information had gotten out and the Houthis had turned their guns around, American lives would have been lost. Pete Hegseth should resign or be fired. Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, should resign or be fired. If we don't hold people accountable, You got two things happening. One, you got the whole military or intel community going, well, damn, if I'd done that, I'd be fired. And if there's no responsibility at the higher ups, what it also does, and this is really important, it scares the hell out of our allies. You know, America first should not be America alone. But with this crowd, there is no requirement that they share intelligence. It's based on trust. Would you trust this crowd with anything of value? And America is less strong if we don't have allies.
Hi, I'm Courtney, and I work for the Food and Drug Administration at ISO. And I'm here this weekend because, I don't know, am I going to have a job? We've been terrorized for 2 months, all of the federal workforce. I've only been at FDA for 2 years, so yeah, I'm definitely on the chopping block. I need to know what you are doing to protect the federal workforce.
Here's what we are doing. One, we're litigating because a lot of these firings are illegal, and so far it appears there's been efforts to bring back probationary. But even then, we don't have full accountability because in some firms, some departments, people are brought back, others, it's been selective bring back. So you have to stay on the litigation end. You have to stay as well on being as loud and vocal and constant as possible. But part of that also means, I remember we had one group of folks who had been fired early on, and they came to our office and they were understandably upset. And we said, well, are you going to go talk to some of the Republican members? And they go, no, they're lost cause.
They will talk to us.
But here is respectfully, they work for you. And if they don't respond, fire them, because the truth is, we don't need to change 50 minds. We need to get 3 votes to switch in the House and 4 in the Senate. Yeah. So, and where I think this will start, honestly, is, what I really think this will start, may be at local elected officials. You've got members of the state legislature, Republican members of city council, when they start feeling, I think about parts of the state that voted 75% for Trump out in Southwest. We've been working for years on projects. We've got the projects awarded now, and we're not sure the money's going to come. So we need the local elected officials across the board to rise up as well.
And ma'am, so on Social Security, so is my husband. We both worked 50 years for our Social Security. Yes, we lost our business in 2008 in the crash of 2008. We lost our home in 2012. No. And financially, we depend on Social Security and our Medicare for our livelihood and for us to just have a simple little life. And I cannot believe what is happening to my country. And I never was afraid to live in this country. And now I'm terrified to live in this country.
We will protect Social Security come hell or high water. We will protect Medicaid come hell or high water. They even realize they get into those realms, and you're going to have a rising up, like you get seniors pissed. That is, and as somebody who qualifies as well, I'm not being discouraged, but the bright line is Medicaid and Social Security, but there's candidly no way for them to hit their numbers without going into that. So we've got to be ready, and when they start BSing, and not to go nerdy, but changing what's called the baseline of what's counted as a tax cut or not, we're going to be in their face. But there will be huge pushback on that. On the notion around the whole movement towards autocracy, you're right. If this is what's happened in Hungary, it's what's happened in Belarus. It is not just one-off. And, the whole notion, America first shouldn't mean America alone. And we are going to lose our allies, and that makes us much less safe. I'm a little biased here because my mom's parents were Canadian, but how do you turn frickin' Canada into an enemy? I mean, it's like, what's kind of like it's wacky is we got one party that's all into you're being screwed because somebody else did something to you. And you should be very afraid about an America that looks like this room. Let's face it, that's what the bottom line of the pitch. Sometimes, and I should be more, we have been I believe at times maybe more focused on identity politics than on economic opportunity. And I think the best thing we can do in Virginia, and I think we are strengthened by diversity. I think this should be a selling item for our Commonwealth. But we need a Democratic Party that's forward-looking, that's optimistic, that's pro-growth, that acknowledges at times when we have gone, when we were a little too regulatory. The fact that we got $42 billion for broadband deployment under Biden, and that was bipartisan, sir, and I was one of the guys that cut the deal. But we didn't get a mile of that fiber laid because we had too much bureaucracy. Thank God in Virginia, Governor Northam took about $500 million of some of the COVID money with the support of the legislature, and we are the furthest along of any state in the country. But we do have to acknowledge at times, we need a more optimistic pro-growth agenda, I believe. And that combines with a sense of decency and justice that says, yes, we want a secure border, but that doesn't mean we give up due process. Yes, we ought to recognize that it is morally wrong and economically wrong if we're rampaging through colleges and throwing people out who are here on legal status. And it means that we ought to, especially in an area like Hampton Roads, we should never give an inch on who stands up more for our men and women in the military and in the intelligence community. And the point that was raised, I am going to stay on this crowd. We don't have their phones. We don't know how many others, chats have been out there. I got it, the Intel Committee I've been proud of for all my time, always bipartisan. And, the question's going to be, will that tradition continue or not? And I can promise you if I told you the stuff I'm doing behind closed doors, I'd have to kill you all.
First is, Russia has infiltrated our government from the inside. And I'd like to know what we're doing about that because I don't really hear that talked about.
And isn't it a little bit more than a little bit curious that Donald Trump says bad things about every person? He is ecumenical. Doesn't matter Democrat or Republican, left or right, except for Vladimir Putin. And the amazing thing is, in the intelligence analysis that was done this week in terms of worldwide threats, it still acknowledges Russia as a threat and that they're going to try to interfere in our elections. At the very same point, this administration is taking down any of the election protection units. That is insane. That is crazy. We are going to keep pushing back and demanding they set that system back up. And the fact, can you imagine, for those of you who served, and I'm old enough to remember, it was always the Soviet Union. The mindset that suddenly we are voting with Russia and North Korea and the bad guys in the UN, where we are refusing to acknowledge that Russia invaded Ukraine. We are a better people and a better country than this, and we need to raise our voices on that topic regularly. I don't expect that all my answers have satisfied you. But I do tell you this. I'm incredibly blessed and lucky. I've had a little bit of financial success. I actually live close. Candidly, I live closer to the Capitol than everybody else in the Congress. So I get to do this on terms that very few people do. I promise you this. I have no interest in doing this job just to be one more go along, get along. I have only an interest in doing this job because I think everything you've said about our country at risk is true. I might differ on what is going to actually get people's attention enough to move more. I 100% agree on First Amendment rights and habeas corpus rights. But I don't know if that's going to be the thing that's going to move the next 20% of people. I could be wrong. But I do think this national security issue, the carelessness, the corruption issue of what's going on, if we can't convince Americans, then shame on us, then our country's not the country that I think it is. So I thank you all for coming, giving up part of a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and if you ever think How nice to see you. If you ever are wondering, and you say, well, God, Warner, why did you do that day? Just remember, you can be rest assured, whatever you're going to complain to me about, Louise has already hit me on it. But it is a country worth fighting for. We will get through this. You know, you give me, what you did today is you give me strength to go back into this fight. And stay in the fight. Stay in the fight. Stay in the fight, everybody. Stay in the fight. Pastor, thank you, sir.